Everyone's staring at Nicole.
I'm staring at the clock. Yeah, Mr. Blanchard's got to sign in before we start the meeting.
I've been doing this 6 years. I don't forget. And I bring extra just in case. Yeah.
You'll have to wait a minute.
Well, there's been times I
A
just
minute.
sucked through whatever I had because I was thirsty, and then I got to the end and I was like, oh my gosh, we were there for hours.
We already talked golf tonight. You're late for that too.
Need a local?
Golf or pickleball, what is it?
What?
Golf or pickleball, what is it?
It's a call that trifecta. Play pickleball in the morning, and lunch, and then golf in the afternoon. Must be rough.
I had that much free time, I would not be playing those sports.
I don't know what I would do myself if I had that much free time.
I'm gonna start recording.
Recording in
All these
progress.
projects I want to get done.
You ready?
Yep.
I'd like to call this meeting order for the Bayfield Town Board for July 16th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg.
Here.
Trustee Hartz.
Here.
Trustee Katzos.
Here.
Trustee Snooks.
Here.
Trustee Moreland.
Here.
Trustee McLaurin.
Here.
And Mayor Ah.
Here. All rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does the board have any conflicts of interest?
Nope.
So I actually have resolution, and just based on the last one is resolution 622, has certain grants, and if you're, the last time there was a announcement that there was a conflict of interest, so just kind of FYI there.
I guess we'd have the same conflict of interest.
Oh,
then.
okay, then it continues whether or not they're here or not.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, then I
Because we
do.
got more money.
Yes. Action agenda D, 7D.
You too?
Yeah.
Okay. General public input. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add before, that's not already on the agenda? Seeing none. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Has everyone looked over the agenda?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll
Second.
second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg.
Yes.
Trustee Hartz.
Yes.
Trustee Katzos.
Yes.
Trustee Snooks.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin.
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
Yes. 2023 audit.
Yes, so Kelly Jones with Hinton and Burdick is on Zoom, and she's going to present the 2023 audit.
Yes. I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully you can see that on your end.
Yes.
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 I really will just jump right into it. As stated, this is the 2023 audit presentation. I'm Kelly Jones with Hinton Burdick CPAs. Just to get started, we first like to thank the town board for this opportunity to serve the town, but we especially like to thank the town staff. They're the ones who have to answer all of our questions and help us find documentation. So we just are really appreciative of them and all of their hard work in preparation for the audit. So we want to give a thank you to them. I just have this short presentation, but if there are any questions that come up, please feel free to ask any question, and any input that Katie might have, we welcome any input as part of this presentation. In your audit, in your town packet, you should have the audited financial statements. We just want to draw your attention to a few reports that you can find in those financial statements. The first is our independent auditor's report, which is found on page 1 of the financial statements. And this report essentially says that based off of our test work, that we believe that the town's financial statements are materially correct as presented, which in smaller terms means we are issuing an unmodified or clean opinion that everything is materially correct. The second report that you would find in your financial statements is our report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. This is found on page 87. If we had any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, these would be outlined in this report. But I would note that in the current year, we don't have any findings, and we also didn't have any findings in 2022. So the town is doing really well in that regard. Just as another note, this isn't an actual report, but sometimes we do have state compliance findings. However, we have not had any state compliance findings in the current year or in the prior year, 2022. So just some financial highlights. I would draw your attention to page 18 if you want to further look into the various funds. On page 18, you can see the net change in fund balances for all of the major funds, and then cumulative for the non-major funds, and overall all of the governmental funds combined. All the governmental funds operated within their approved budgets for 2023, and you can see all of those statements of actual budgets starting on page 66 for all of the governmental funds. Similarly, we have the proprietary funds or the utility funds, and you can see those outlined on page 21, where you'll see the change in net position for each of those funds. All proprietary funds operated within their approved budgets, and you can find those budget to actual statements for the proprietary funds starting on page 75. I just have a couple of graphs we'd like to go over, just outlining what the ending resources for all of these major funds are that will then get carried over into 2024. You can see on this graph for the general fund, we have 3 types of classifications in general fund balance. We have restricted fund balance, which is the red line, assigned fund balance, which is the blue line, and unassigned, which is the green line. The restricted fund balance of 182,000 is for the emergency reserve based off of state law. The assigned fund balance has to do with public safety assignments that were made in the 2024 budget. And then the unassigned fund balance, as you can see, has increased a significant portion in 2023 up to the 1.8 million. The recommendation and best practices were to be able to maintain 2 months in unassigned fund balance, and the town currently has more than 7 months of expenses that can be paid for out of this unassigned fund balance. So the general fund is healthy and doing well at the end of 2023. Moving fund, it has restricted fund balance, which is the green line, and it has committed or assigned fund balance, which is the blue line. The restricted fund balance relates to money that has been received for the east intersection project that has not yet been used. You can see it's going down. Things have started, but it has not fully been used. The committed assigned balance is just assigned or committed for future street projects, whatever they may be. There were more expenditures in 2023, which is why you're seeing this overall decrease, but the fund is still doing really well and has reserves for future projects. In the capital improvement fund, similarly, we have a restricted fund balance and we have committed or assigned fund balance. The restricted fund balance relates to parks and recreation for impact fees or the park and loop fees. So those are monies that are restricted for park purposes. And then the blue line is just committed or assigned fund balance for future capital projects, whatever they may be. They don't necessarily have to be for parks, just whatever future capital projects the town has. In the water fund or proprietary funds, we have slightly different classifications. So here we have net investments in capital assets, which is the green line. That's essentially your equity that is tied up in capital assets, so not able to use monetarily, not easy to liquidate. And then we have the blue line, which is unrestricted net position, and then the red line, which is restricted. In the water fund, the majority of the net position is made up of capital assets or investments in capital assets. There is some slight change every year due to if you have additions or how much depreciation is, and those type of things that will affect the net investment line. However, the restricted fund balance relates to debt service reserve requirements, which are fully funded for future debt payments that are needed. And then unrestricted fund balance did slightly go down, but there is still 18 months that can be paid for in expenses based off of this unrestricted balance. So this fund is stable and doing well. Similarly, the same type of classifications here in the sewer fund. Again, as I mentioned, the net investments will change based off of capital asset activity. There was a significant amount of capital assets purchased in 2023, which was why we're seeing this increase overall. Again, the restricted relates to debt service requirements, which are fully funded. And then we have the unrestricted of the $1.7 million, which would be used to pay for future expenditures. And there are over 12 months of expenditures that can be paid by this unrestricted balance in future years. And then lastly, we just have an overall cash trend. We have all the governmental funds, which is the green line, and the business type funds, which is the blue line. Governmental funds increased $270,000, and then the proprietary funds or utility funds decreased about $248,000. There is still significant amounts of cash in all of these funds that would be used in future years. So the cash trend is also doing well. That is all that I have. If you have any questions, I have put the partner, Chad Atkinson's contact information, or myself are on this slide. If there are future questions, but I'm able to answer any questions that you might have right now, if there are any.
Does the board have any questions for Kelly?
I have a couple. On page 30, towards the bottom, you talk about the town board adheres to the following procedures in establishing the budgetary data reflected in the financial statement. The second to the bottom bullet point says the finance director is required to present a monthly report to the town board explaining any variance from the approved budget. Is that a requirement? What do you mean by, what does that mean exactly? As far as the board's responsibility and reviewing, having that quarterly review?
Yeah, that's just referring to that the board will be receiving budget to actual reports in their meetings that they can view and know any variance throughout the year. If you're getting close to budget, then this might be a time that an amendment might take place. But that monthly budget to actual reports are being provided and reviewed by the board.
Okay, thank you. And then the last bullet, formal budgetary integration is employed as a management control device during the year for all funds of the town. What does that mean specifically in like normal everyday terms?
That would just mean that the budget's getting implemented into their accounting system so that that's easily tracked, or there's some type of management device that might be in their system. It could be external to their system, just so that those budget to actual reports are easily obtainable and presented to the town. So integrated in some type of software that would show here's our actual and here's our budgeted information.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think I'm good.
Is there any questions from the general public?
Can I just congratulate you on doing a great job? I know it was a mountain to climb when you took it over, Kathy, so good job in keeping it up and doing what you've done.
It's been a process.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
I would like to echo that.
Yes, I've got a question for Kathy more than this lady. One time we got a report where it's a, budget to actual and the percentage of the budget we've used so far. How often do you send that out? Because I found that very useful.
You get it once a month. It's in your packet tonight, the financial statements for the month.
See, I'm not, for some reason, I didn't, I've only got 9 pages on here and something's wrong.
There's more than one package. There's like a link with multiple.
She's going to help me.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's page 32, so if you only got 9 pages.
Well, these are the notes and recommendations. Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's okay. You receive the financial statement the second meeting of every month,
Okay.
okay?
I thought that was pretty cool.
Great job, Ms. Kathy.
Thank you.
Yes, well done.
Moving on to audit, 2023 audit 2B.
So this is, you've already accepted the audit. Now you would approve the audit. I'd ask that maybe Kelly send those graphs because it's kind of difficult to see on the screen so that I can send that out to the board as well so you can actually have those as well. But now in order to meet the deadline for the state, we need to submit this by the 31st of, or 30th or 31st of July. And so you can either approve it tonight, or you can, if you have any other questions or concerns, we do have some work sessions, and we could just add a special meeting to that if you desire.
I'm personally ready to approve it.
I am too.
Me too.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2023 audit.
I second.
I got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any comments from the general public? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
Trustee Hartz,
Yes.
Trustee Katzos,
Yes.
Trustee Snooks,
Yes.
Trustee Moreland,
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin,
Yes.
and Mayor Ah.
Yes.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Moving on to the public hearing on ordinance 502, Chapter 10 of the amendments.
So, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Nicole Killian. So this is an amendment to Chapter 10 of the Municipal Code. Back in early 2024, we brought Chapter 9, which we have as nuisance, and we added noxious weeds to that section, or that chapter. And as part of that, we moved undesirable plant management from Chapter 10 to Chapter 9 under noxious weeds. And our municipal code really should be referencing the land use code, and there's nowhere in our municipal code that references that. So we wanted to use Chapter 10 to reference the land use code because it's already referencing the comprehensive plan. So really the changes to Chapter 10 would be adding the land use code reference, amending the comp plan just to make it more updated than when it was last put in the code, and then removing the undesirable plant management, as we've already accommodated that in Chapter 9. So the ordinance that's before you tonight would be Ordinance 502, just making those changes to the municipal code. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions, comments? Is there any public input? I'll close the public hearing.
And I do want to add one more thing. The town attorney did review and provide comments already. And those have been updated in the documentation.
And that did pass the planning commission by, was it 5 or 4? I forget
It
how
was
many we had.
unanimous. I just can't, we had 5.
I don't remember how many we had.
Yeah,
I know we
had
weren't
5.
full.
So
5.
unanimous, 5-0.
So I'm going to close the public hearing on that and open up approval of the minutes and the department reports. Looking at the July 2nd, 2024 minutes. Has the board had a chance to review those?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the regular meeting July 2nd, 2024 minutes.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
Trustee Hartz,
Yes.
Trustee Katzos,
Yes.
Trustee Snooks,
Yes.
Trustee Moreland,
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin,
Yes.
and Mayor Ah.
Yay. Next up is department report from Public Works.
Could I just interrupt you for just a little bit to introduce some new employees?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Josh Kellinger is our new facilities and grounds person. He started last Monday and already done a lot of work and also has a lot of contacts because of his previous work here in La Plata County. So really happy to have him on board. And then Marie Keim, she is our HR director. She just started on Monday. She's going to be with us until the 24th. Then she's got an already planned vacation, so there'll be a 2-week break, and then she'll be back after in the second week in August. So anyway, so really happy to have her on board. She's very excited, doing a lot of things, and we've already handed her a lot of duties.
I bet.
Congratulations.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Don't
I just wanted-
overwork her before her vacation.
Give her a lot to think about.
Jeremy?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. I did prepare a June report. I'd like to point out we had 145 locate requests come through. So we've been really busy with construction activity, and that's just in the month of June. Circle Z's been upsizing some of La Plata electric lines underground on the north side of town, and then we still have a lot of fiber optic installation and activities. We had a couple sewer backups. We were able to respond in a timely fashion and get those lines open back up without any damage or significant, I guess, downtime to residents. We did have a large storm event in June, and if you look at the graphs for like the sewer plant inflows, you can see in 2022 when we had the June large storm event, you can see that in 24 on the June 30th. So another large storm. We did get a little bit of flooding with that over some of the sections we're trying to get repaired on Lupine, and that came up in 22. So those are still on the radar, and those are scheduled to be repaired this year. We got chip seal coming up. They'll be doing a large portion of the north side. I think I provided a map a little while back. Cedar, basically the bus routes on the north side of town, and then we'll be chip sealing North Street as well. That's pretty much all I have for now, unless you had any questions.
I have I got a question. Has anybody addressed Josh Joshuick's comments from 2 weeks ago about the pothole in front of his driveway?
Yeah, so we're right now trying to obtain quotes to actually see what it would cost to pave driveways throughout there. So we'll be bringing those numbers back to you as well.
Okay, because there's another one, kitty corner for me at 161 in that curve.
Mm-hmm.
The water line that we did there a couple of years ago cut like really close to his drive, and he works for the city of Durango, and he's been filling his own pothole in out there, and that's kind of an issue for him too.
Okay.
I'm going to keep hearing it.
Yeah, well, we're currently trying to solicit pricing for that.
Okay.
And the reason being on there is when you really look at the driveway elevations, if you walk up and down that road, all of them are different elevations. So in order to do repaving, we'd have to actually reshape the road. So there was a lot of subgrade dirt work and earthwork that would go in, and we wouldn't have been able to do those improvements this time around. It would have been pushed. So we decided to do the traffic lanes, which is 11-foot travel lanes and a 3-foot taper, and resurface that road so it would be passable. But we're currently trying to get pricing. And one thing that we're finding too is for some of these smaller jobs, during the busy season, we have a hard time getting asphalt pavers and contractors out. So we were talking to the contractors that are doing Mustang Crossing, and they're also doing another patch up here for Pine River Commons, and see if it might be possible to piggyback on some of those projects and get that addressed.
Okay. I just need to answer the questions when they come to me.
Okay.
So for right now, are they all done with the construction on that street? Because there's still a couple of construction signs on Mesa.
And cones on the manholes.
And so I don't know if they're supposed to stay for a certain amount of time.
The construction signs, I don't believe, are for Los Pinos. The cones on the manholes are for the concrete diamonds that are on there that they have cut currently.
They're done.
On Mesa Avenue?
No, on Los Pinos, they're done with those diamonds. They still got cones on those.
Yeah, we got to protect it from traffic for 7 days.
Oh.
So they'll be picked up once the cure time's met.
All right.
But we'll check into the signs. If they don't need the signs, they'll get them removed.
It's the sign company that put those signs up, and I'm pretty sure they're their sign. They're
ACM?
Yeah. I mean, I talked to the traffic control guy when he was out there, and he was basically leaving even though that day. And he says, I'm done after this, and then the signs are laying all over.
Maybe they're a donation.
Perhaps.
But, yeah,
Well,
I'd be donated to Public Works.
Now you can protect your crew.
Yeah, but we'll check into it and get them picked up if they're done.
Any other questions?
One says end road work. Be nice to just put that out.
Yeah, and you know what? I was looking at the website today too, so we do need to take down the Tamarack and the Los Pinos paving stuff off the webpage as well. So there's a little bit of cleanup stuff we need to do to close down.
Thank you.
Very good. Chief of Police?
Sergeant Stritzel.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees, I'm Sergeant Stritzel with the Police Department. Chief Hoge couldn't be here today, so I'll be basically just providing a summary of his monthly summary. So Chief attended a number of meetings and trainings in the month of June, including 4th of July planning meetings, got his notary training completed, CDOT meetings, traffic accident review for Highway 160, conducted a department training, topics covered self-initiated patrolling activity, traffic safety enforcement, visibility, Spillman CAD notes and calls for service, and trained on contact and cover. Budget work sessions, received awarded from the state of Colorado post a grant for $10,367.40 towards the academy cost for a new hire. Participated in HR interviews and the first responders appreciation at the Durango Harley-Davidson. The department had 2 use of force incidents in June. Both were reviewed and found to be within policy. No complaints in June. He outlines the calls for service for 2023 versus 2024. Overall events in 23 in June was 229, and 1 citation, criminal citation, and 57 traffic events. 2024 was 100 events, 24 traffic stops, 2 traffic citations, and 2 criminal citations and 3 traffic citations. Addresses recruitment. We're currently in the process of still looking for and accepting applications for the school resource officer to replace me with my position. We have 2 in training still, Officer Lee and Officer Rittenhouse. They completed their first month of training in June. Let's see. It says designing a training plan for new hires as well as preparing to address for future growth by sending qualified officers to leadership courses. I did complete a module 1 for first line supervisor courses by FBI LEDA. I did enroll in the second of the 3 courses that actually they canceled that training. And we're looking at sending 2 officers to first line supervisor courses in the near future. And we do have Officer John signed up for a read interview course for detective specialist position. That's all I've got, unless you have any questions for me.
Does the board have any questions?
No?
I just have a question about what's the difference between the number of calls handled in June 2023 and June 2024? That's way down.
Staffing.
Staffing?
Yeah. 2 officers that are training 2 new.
Yeah, I mean, I would be sort of assuming and speculating a little bit on that. There's some of
That's
that
right. I understand.
is our data management systems are different, and we're still transitioning to some of that, which does influence some of that. Our staffing could definitely have some influence on that as well.
Got it.
So it's all those extra patrols that you guys used to see, used to be considered a call. It's not a call in Spillman anymore.
Gotcha.
So it does reduce.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Community Development Director?
Yeah, so my report's really just a mid-year update of what's gone on in the department. So you'll see we have a couple programs we've been working on, hoping that through the dark skies we'll have a lighting code, and then also the agriculture zoning have an agriculture zone in front of you in the fall. That's my goal for those 2. We'll continue working on the Growing Water Smart program, and then in the energy performance contract, and then the ISO has been completed. You can see we have quite a few grants that we're working on, and we just applied for another $2 million for Pine River Commons. We're waiting to hear back from DOLA if that's been approved, and that'll help them with their infrastructure to keep those units at a lower AMI for our workforce. And the land use project should have said first half, not first quarter, so I apologize for that. And that just shows some of those projects, or all the projects that we've dealt with in the first half of the year. And then you'll see our building permits. So we've received 29 this year. We have 6 right now or we have more than that now. This was at the end of June. But we had at that time 6 pending and 23 permits issued, 13 certificate of occupancy or completeness were issued. And then 2 things I really wanted to get some feedback from the board on. The first one is just vacation rentals. You know, there's been some articles in the paper about vacation rentals versus housing, long-term housing for people. Right now, in 2022, the board approved a vacation rental ordinance, an amendment to the vacation rental ordinance that limited vacation rentals to 30 in town limits, so a cap of 30 total. And then they have to be 500 feet from each other. Right now, we are at 7 approved, and I have one more coming to the Planning Commission next month. It seems like every month there's been a new one. And I probably get a couple calls a week now, inquiries about vacation rentals. So I just wanted to understand if the board's comfortable with the 30 cap, or if you'd like to revisit that at a next meeting and maybe look at reducing that. So I just wanted to throw that out there just because, you know, vacation rentals, we don't have lodging opportunities in our community, so it's an economic driver for our community to have the vacation rentals, but also it does take long-term housing off the market. So I just wanted to kind of get your feedback if you'd like us to revisit that. And then the second one is, you know, Porky's Smokehouse just came through the Planning Commission for a sign variance. It was approved. And back in 2019, the sign code was amended, and all the signs that are non-residential, so all our commercial zones, the sign height for freestanding signs went from 25 feet to 10 feet. And that makes sense, you know, maybe on Bayfield Center, but in our highway corridor, the highway's already elevated above those businesses. So you drop that sign to 10 feet, it really drops the height of those signs along the highway corridor. The other thing is every business along the highway corridor has a taller than 10-foot sign. And so if they all want to replace their sign faces, they would all either need to drop them to 10 feet or ask for sign variance. So I just wanted to get some feedback from the board. The Planning Commission would like to see us amend the sign code just for the highway corridor. So not all commercial in town, but the highway corridor, and look at a higher sign height. And I wanted to get a feel from the board before I would bring something back to you for your consideration. So those are two things I'd appreciate some feedback on.
What's the standard height for signage? Do you know?
You mean industry-wide?
Yeah.
Oh, it varies by
Okay.
community. I would say highways, you tend to see a little bit higher signs because you're going at a higher speed.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because our highway is elevated above those businesses that are abutting the highway.
Mm-hmm.
But again, 10 feet is probably pretty standard in other commercial areas now. You really want to see those signs lowered because when your road's closer to the property, you're not really looking up. You know, so having that 10-foot sign is probably more aligned with vehicles driving by, but on the highway that's elevated, you are looking at a further distance down the road to see where the gas stations are and where you need to be pulling off. So it makes a little more sense along the highway. But 20 feet is probably, I'm just kind of throwing that, I'll probably do a little research if you do want, if you're inclined to have me look at an amendment, I'll do some research of what other communities in our area and along the Highway 160 corridor are doing for sign heights.
I would be in favor of that amendment. I think that to advertise, because the highway does sit a lot higher than down low, so I'd be in favor of that.
I would too, but I would also like to know like how high some of those current signs are, what the difference is between the highway height and the regular roads as well, just so that we don't end up with, you know, these really, really,
Right.
really tall signs that don't go with our town. But it makes sense to me because, you know, signs don't last forever. They have to be replaced at some point or they'll look that poorly. And so we would be seeing variances all the time to fix those that are already there. So to me, it just kind of, in the future, reduces some work for somebody somewhere.
Well, and I think driving business to town through signage is a good idea. I just want to make sure, to
That
your
too.
point, that we don't get ridiculous with it. So I'd be very curious about sort of a standard when it comes to that. But I'm interested in anything that drives more business into town. Also, do you know how many housing units we have in Bayfield?
We have 1,100 right now.
1,100?
And we have about 800 in review, and that includes the Pine River Commons and Mustang Crossing, Orchard, so like the newer projects that we've, since I've been here in the last 2.5 years, about another 800 in review.
I was just trying to calculate the ratio of how many housing units we have to
Vacation rentals.
the vacation rentals. And it feels like at this time, 30 is good, moving towards that 1,900 total units. How much are the permits for?
$500 for the permit, $500 deposit. We use the deposit for all of our legal notices, any attorney review, and then whatever is left of that deposit, they do get back.
And is it one-time permit?
It's it's annual.
Okay.
Vacation rentals have to be updated annually. When they come back in every January, it's a $100 fee, and that's just staff looking and making sure they're still in compliance with their original approvals. If we have any, I would say, code enforcement issues, like trash issues or noise, over the years, we'll track that, and if that feels like it's excessive, then we'd probably bring it back to the Planning Commission for their consideration. Vacation rentals are not a by right use, it's discretionary, so the Planning Commission can just say no, and they don't have to have code language that really backs that up. They can just say no, and then the appeal process would be to come to the board if they want to appeal Planning Commission's decision. The other thing with vacation rentals is they're not transferable. So when an owner changes on a property, that vacation goes away, or vacation rental goes away, and the new owner would have to reapply, and they're not guaranteed they're going to get it. Again, it's discretionary approval.
And then does the town charge, well, we don't have the lodger's tax, so
No,
we're not getting
the
any other
county
benefit.
does. So the county benefits from our lodging. They collect the
So it
lodger's
seems like we
tax.
should get a lodging tax in place before we add more units. It seems to me, and I know that there's a need for housing, for families visiting and things like that, but, you know, we also not every neighborhood needs 3 to 5 vacation rentals on every
Right.
block kind of a thing.
Yeah,
so.
it's a delicate balance, and that's to say economic development-wise, it's good for us to bring, transient, visitors to the town. It's good for the economic, benefit of our restaurants and our stores, for our park usage, but it's also, it also does take those housing units off the market. So, again, it's one of those things that we're gonna probably maybe annually revisit and make sure that it's still aligning with our values and how we want to see the community progress. But we've just received a lot lately. We've had 2 in May, 1 in June, 2 in June, 1 in July, and now another one in August. So that's 4 in just the last 3 meetings. So.
What if we reduced it and then visited if we get to that mark and want to revisit it at that point? What concerns me is that if you continue on the track that you're going, we're going to have 30 in no time, and no time for us to actually sit down and take a look to see if it's affecting the economy too much in a bad way. But if you reduce it a little bit, maybe that gives us some time to stop things and revisit and kind of look at it again. It's just a thought.
Or can we just give you a number, like when we get to, how long will it take us to go through the process of allowing more units? Like, will it take us, I don't know, like when we get to 15 units, do we want to revisit it? Or is it good to revisit it every year? Or, some kind of benchmark, like you're saying.
Yeah, I like your 15 idea.
That we could look at it, and that gives us time to act and doesn't shut the door on anybody unless it's like they're beating down the door, and then we need to do it the next meeting.
So you would want to, when we get close to 15, me to come back and say, we're getting close to 15, do you want to reduce it, or do you want to reduce the code to 15? And then when we get to that point, you would confirm if you want to add more. I mean, you can go both ways.
Which is less work.
Yeah.
They're
I
kind
mean-
of about the same, aren't they?
Yeah, amending the code, it takes a little more time, but that gives us a little bit more, what if I get like 10 in 1 month? I mean,
Yeah,
not to
that, I
say
mean, that's
will,
possible, though.
but then that would take us to 18 in 1 month, and I wouldn't have that time to, so I mean, I'd prefer for, if you have a number in mind, to look at that and change the code, and then amend the code in the future if you want to add more as we grow, then to just try and remind you that we're getting close to 15.
Yeah, I think going off her preferences probably might be a better idea.
Well, and I wish that there's some way to track the true benefit. It's hard to track it with sales within the town, people using restaurants and things like that, which is why I asked about, us creating a lodger's tax before we go anywhere. We could track that. We could, create a ratio of what we're really seeing in income, by giving up this sort of, management of how many houses per block have vacation rentals on them or whatever. I mean, there's got, I don't want to have an emotional decision here. I want to be thoughtful about what's the best way to pursue it.
Right,
I
well,
can ask.
it's not permanent, so
Yeah.
if we did have that benchmark of 15, we at least know it's not permanent, but what it does is, like, if she is ever presented with a ton of them and can't get to us in time and is just approving them, because at that point, she's got no reason to say no. Do you know what I mean? And so this gives her, some room to be able to come and see us and say, hey, we've got more, what do you want to do at that point? Also, keep in
So
mind, too.
That we need to change the code.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so, too.
And outdoors, you just added all of those little cabins, too, and they're right on our doorstep. And how many did they add? There's something like 12 of them or something like that. So that added to our
Lodging, yeah.
vacation rentals as well. Even though it's not within the town, it still adds to, what it benefits the town for.
And we do have another RV park that's probably getting very close to submitting, and they're going to look at some cabins too, and that is in the town limits. Outdoorsy's not yet. I could try and ask the county who collects the lodger's tax if they have a breakdown of Bayfield. Sometimes they don't like to release detailed
I got
tax
that from
information.
Chuck
but-
Stevens.
Yeah, so I can.
Yeah. But
can see.
some RV parks are considered taxable under a lodger's tax. So when you're talking about short-term rentals and they're going to have an RV park in town, all of a sudden you're changing that number significantly.
Yeah, yep. But I'll see if the county is willing to release what they collect annually from our, until, again, 2 months ago, we only had 4. So see what they're collecting from those 4.
Do you have any idea how many Durango has?
Durango has caps in all their neighborhoods,
Uh-huh.
and my guess is they have a little over 100 between all their neighborhoods, but they have a lot of hotels too. So they have a lot of
Yes.
options that
Yeah.
we don't have.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, they don't have any RV parks, but they have,
So for clarity, you're saying have her come to us at 15 and then decide if we should change the code at that point.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
So
That sounds,
then I will
that sounds
prepare
reasonable.
an amendment for both the sign and the vacation rentals. Go to planning commission first because their land use code changes, and then to the board of trustees.
Okay.
So with that, that RV park in town that's adding cabins, those won't be included in this count.
Not right now, but eventually they'll be included in our lodging count, and if we ever get a lodger's tax, they would be included.
Right.
But I would not consider them short-term rentals because they're part of the RV park, so it's a different type of lodging.
Okay.
It just still affects us and
Yeah, so they
affects
wouldn't,
the town
they
in the same
wouldn't count
manner.
against our 15.
Right.
Because they would not be considered. But I mean, that's actually a good question. Should they? I don't know.
Well, I don't think they should. I mean,
I don't think so.
they're not, you can't live in it long term.
No,
It's not like
it's-
a house you could buy and live in.
Yeah, okay. So I won't count them right now. So I heard 15 is what people are leaning towards, and I'll bring that, and of course you can change that when it's in front of you, but
Okay.
I'll start with that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Moving on to the financial agenda. June 2024 financial statements.
Good evening. My report is included in your packet, but just to go over some of the highlights, at the statement that you have this evening is for the end of June, and so half of the year is over. All the funds are operating as expected. In the general fund, we have received, JAG is a little late in getting us their money for the policing expansion grant. We did get the first quarters. And we only spent $2,500 in capital improvement projects this month, and that was to finish up the Gosney Park irrigation. The Conservation Trust Fund, we have received our second quarter of lottery funds. In the sewer and the water funds, plant investment fees are higher than what we had anticipated at this point. We have received our city sales, county and city sales tax. That's for April. So we're, of course, 2 months behind on sales tax. So, don't panic when you see that some of the funds are expenditures over revenue, because that works itself out later. And we do also have, I have 2 grants that we submitted for reimbursement that we have received in July. So that will fix part of that as well. The only thing that I'm seeing, computer hardware and software and internet is running high in most all of the funds. So that's something that we'll discuss as we're preparing the budget for next year. The only thing that we changed that is something new on this month is, in the past, we are charged a merchant fee on our checking account statement, and it's a merchant fee for all the credit cards payments that we take. Those merchant fees are for utility payments. In the past, we have always charged that fee to miscellaneous expense in the general fund. It's not a miscellaneous expense. It's an expense for water, sewer, and garbage. Katie and I sat down, we discussed that. It should be an operational expense in those funds. So I did make a journal entry in the water, sewer, and garbage funds to move those for the first 5 months of the year, and then in June's, when I reconciled that bank statement, I moved those funds appropriately. So that's the only thing different on this month's financial statements. The total interest earned this month in Colo Trust was $47,114. And other than that, I do want to thank you guys for approving the audit. And I also want to let you know that in June, I've been here 15 years in June. When I started in 2009, I had no desire to be the town's finance director.
Well,
I was looking for a part-time something, and I answered the telephone. That's it. I quickly became a deputy clerk. Right after that, I became the town clerk. About 3 years ago, Katie and at that time Mayor Tarkington came to me and said we were having a heck of a time trying to find a finance director. We had been through lots of them. And Katie asked me, Kathy, will you just do it? Okay. It's been a process. I have built a pretty good connection with a big network of other financial professionals that do the exact same thing. I've had lots of assistance from our auditors, Kelly, that you spoke to tonight, her supervisor, Chad. The support staff at Cassell have a wonderful finance support staff that has helped me considerably. But nothing has helped me more than Town Manager Sickles. She has lots of knowledge in this profession. And so the thanks isn't just to me, it's been to the whole staff and especially to Katie for holding my hand. And I'm finally at a point where I do feel comfortable in what I do. I do feel like I know what I'm talking about when I give you these reports and when I look at these numbers, but it's been a long time coming. It's been a process.
Oh, yes, it has.
So,
You're doing
thank you.
awesome. I am not objective to that change, removing those expenditures from the general fund. Anything that we can remove that's an expenditure on the
Absolutely.
general fund is
Yes.
way okay in my book.
Yeah.
I know that when we have expenditures over revenue, that not to freak out, because a lot of times we're
Yeah.
still getting some funds. And sometimes you explain it in here and sometimes you don't. And I would ask for just maybe a little more consistency, because I'm like, okay, well, where's that money coming from? And like
Absolutely.
I get to that last one for the street fund and you're like, oh, it hasn't been received. Grant funds haven't been received. No biggie, you know. But I look for those expenditures over revenue.
Okay. I'll remember to mention that.
Thank you.
You bet.
I'd also like to commend the town across the board for their grant efforts. It's been really great to see that effort put forth, and it takes time, but our town is greatly benefiting from the grant effort, so good job, team.
Any other questions or comments on the financial, for the financial statements for June?
Looks good.
Sales tax reports?
So you do have to have action on the financial
Sorry.
statement.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the June 2024 financial statement.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Hartz?
Yes.
Trustee Katzos?
Yes.
Trustee Snooks?
Yes.
Trustee Moreland?
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin?
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
Yes. Moving on to the sales tax report.
Yeah, your sales tax, the Bayfield sales tax is up 6%, and the county's is up 2.3%. So we continue to increase, and with Tractor Supply coming on and O'Reilly Auto Parts, we're looking for that to increase as well later on in the year, so.
I find it really crazy because since they started doing the sales tax differently with, like, when you buy something online, it has done nothing but go up every single year. It's crazy. It's awesome, though. Keep expecting it to stop.
We all keep shopping at Amazon.
Right. That's what it is, hey. Can't get everything here. I'd rather do that than shop in Durango. At least we get the tax.
Any other comments on the sales tax? Move on to the stormwater plans, alternatives and hydraulic analysis, tech memo link.
So this from ECOM, or ACOM, I'm not too sure how you say it, was we were contacted by the Department of Natural Resources about the flood that we have in June of 2022. And after that, this is probably the first project that was funded by the Department of Natural Resources. So ECOM basically did this analysis for us, and we sent this analysis to SGM, who is our town engineer, and they're looking at it kind of as a different hydrology study. So it's very important to put these two together eventually to have kind of a final master drainage plan. They did a really great presentation of, more technical terms of this study, and they're interested in having us present at their Colorado conference, I believe, regarding the benefit to the town. So our engineer is taking a look at this, wanted to make sure that you had it. Unlike, the river that we're always concerned about, you can actually see where the flood, where it's streaming across the town and actually going the wrong direction. So there's areas where we want it to go towards the river, and it's actually going the opposite direction. So I thought this is really important, especially as we're getting into our stormwater enterprise.
Yep, and this was also a grant from FEMA, so we didn't have to pay anything for this process. And like Katie's saying, we're a water critical zone, so all our stormwater is supposed to go back into the river. And when our stormwater goes into some of the ditches, which is what we're trying to prevent as part of our feasibility study, but when it goes into the ditches, some of those ditches head east away from the river, and so we do have to figure that out. And you can see from some of this drainage patterns that some of our stormwater is heading away from the river, and we're not supposed to be doing that.
Are there any questions from the board?
I like the work that's being done on this so we can do it right, because we're going to get ready to do this right. So I think it's really important that we have as much valid and quality information as we can. So I think that this is an excellent report.
Any other comments, questions? Master drainage plan update?
Yeah, so this is the master drainage plan that the engineers reviewed with the board on the 30th of May. We are getting ready to finalize that, to get a final master drainage plan. I just wanted to make sure that was also in the packet, especially with a resolution regarding fees that's coming up a little bit later in your agenda.
Any questions? Is there any public comment? Moving on to the action agenda. 7A, Ordinance 502, the Chapter 10 amendments.
Happy to answer any additional questions on that one.
Mr. Mayor, I approve ordinance, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 502, adopting the municipal code amendments to Chapter 10 with the following findings. The amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan, municipal code, and land use code.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any public comment? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Hartz?
Yes.
Trustee Katzos?
Yes.
Trustee Snooks?
Yes.
Trustee Moreland?
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin?
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
Yes. Resolution 620, public building electrification.
Yeah, so real quickly on this one, I was in front of you 2 weeks ago asking to apply for a DOLA grant for $1 million for the energy performance contract. And so this is very similar. We're asking for a grant for $500,000 for the energy performance contract for building electrification. Once the energy audit is complete, if the board decides not to move forward with the energy performance contract, then we would just not accept the grant. But because of the grant timeline, and because the audit's not complete, we do need to apply now to meet the deadline. And then again, if you decide not to move forward, we just won't accept the grant.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve Resolution 620.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Hartz?
Yes.
Trustee Katzos?
Yes.
Trustee Snooks?
Yes.
Trustee Moreland?
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin?
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
Yes. Next up is Resolution 621, Transformative Landscape.
Yeah, so this is a really neat opportunity. I met recently with Resource Central. They're a nonprofit here in Colorado. They do a lot of work with the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and they found out that we were going through the WaterWise program with the Sonoran Institute, and reached out and said they have a program called the Transformative Landscape Change Challenge. And they just closed the first round of applications, but they said they're going to be opening the second one very soon, and they encourage us to apply. And what this is, it's a program where we would provide it or do an application for town hall, and they can remove up to 2,500 square feet of unusable turf area and replace it with native perennials and xeriscape. And the town's match would either be, it's in kind, so it could be funds, but it could also be manpower, so using our staff to help remove. It could be the change from sprinklers to irrigation, drip irrigation for these new areas. It could be the providing of mulch, and so there's a lot of different ways that we can provide our match without having to really provide funds. And so I think it's something that we should really consider, especially being part of the WaterWise program. You know, Katie's been talking for a while now about how we should be an example to the community, and this would be a great test garden opportunity on town hall property. And again, the match, it would be very minimal. And we already have Parks and Rec staff that can help with that, and I'm sure some, depending on what we can do, I'm sure some town hall staff would be interested in helping with this process. So I do need to get the application in soon. I think they have extended allowing us to apply, and they said just get the application as soon as possible, and they're excited about town hall being a candidate. So just want to get permission to apply for that.
This is awesome. I think this is awesome. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 621.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any public input? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Hartz?
Yes.
Trustee Katsas?
Yes.
Trustee Snooks?
Yes.
Trustee Moreland?
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin?
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
Yes. Next up is Resolution 622. Michael and Elaine Moore grant cycle.
Yeah, I didn't even read that.
We leave now, right?
I passed this up. Wait a minute, I'm finding myself. Okay.
Did you want me to introduce this?
Yes, please.
So Resolution 622 is from an additional funding that we received from Michael Moravan and Elaine Moravan. The check we got was $40,000. It arrived on Friday. I think, pretty sure it got deposited Monday or Tuesday. So in a discussion I had with Michael, he was wondering why it wasn't divided up more, the first $10,000, and I said, really, I'm not really too sure why, but we had the presentations and we went through that, and he did commend the board for making the decision that they made, and he did say it was a very hard decision. So anyway, he wanted to make it a total of $50,000, so he did give us another $40,000, and so this is the discussion we had regarding the $20,000 to go to the current applications, and another $20,000 being used for to rehabilitate a veteran.
It's not me, it's her phone. And it's in her bag.
homes for veterans in the Bayfield area. And so I do have a nonprofit that is eligible, and I did talk to John Jarrett, and he's very interested in assisting us to determine veterans. I didn't want to actually have veterans apply themselves. I really felt a nonprofit gives them a little bit of, confidentiality and what they may be facing in their homes. So anyway, this is $20,000, and he is, John and his organization are interested in assisting with the veteran home rehabilitation. So the grant, the resolution is for the grant. Basically, you may possibly see a budget supplement because we didn't expect $50,000, and $50,000 is also going back out. And in Tabor, it's required that you actually have a supplement for expenditures, not necessarily for revenue. So it's not an even out type of item, but it will require your consideration for 622, and then a budget supplement is probably be the third quarter, September, October of 2024.
So is the proposed awards something that they wanted in addition to what was already dispersed?
Not necessarily what they wanted, we just had a discussion. He wanted to know a little bit about BEEP because they asked for $5,000, they got $5,000, and he reread their application kind of while we were on the phone. He was kind of going through that, and he said, well, just, give them a little bit more. I said, it looks like that they're providing, childcare, and, a great program. So it was just his, he was just kind of going through the numbers.
Gotcha, okay. I was just curious because the one that stands out the most that's actually military related is the Blue
Yeah.
Stars Moms.
Yeah.
They are actual.
They are actually, and he
organization
did
that
ask about
supports
that, and,
military.
I said I really couldn't answer why it wasn't. But he was very thankful and really appreciated the process that we went through.
Gotcha. I would say move the stuff from Friends of the Public Library to the Blue Star Moms so that they can get what they need to get that cargo van.
I would actually defer to changing the Blue Star Moms, because that's for a cargo trailer, and that's important. I wanted to give them money when we had the original discussion, but I'd like to give them like $2,500, and I feel like anything that directly affects individuals, like BEEP, I'd like to move $2,500 from the Blue Star Moms to BEEP and increase their amount. But everything else
If I remember correctly, when he gave us the original 10,000, it was for us to go towards veterans, correct?
And that's why the Blue
Yes.
Mom
That-
Stars
Yeah.
is the one that should get the money
Yeah,
that they want.
where needed most, and then veterans was his focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the only organization that is specific to
Mhm.
veterans, that helps veterans.
Well, I
so.
definitely wanted to give them money originally.
Yeah. Oh, no,
yeah.
I'm not saying anything
Yeah.
like that. I just would like to get them their cargo van.
Me too.
Sorry, I was married military. I have a veteran spouse. It's important.
I'm all good with it.
From what I remember from the BEEP presentation, they were using it for veteran families to help pay for their tuition and stuff, so.
Right, I wasn't saying.
No,
take it from
I'm
the-
not.
Yeah,
I know what you meant. I
Yeah,
just,
not take it from the BEEP, but more maybe the Friends of the Library, because they already got 5,000. Right? You guys did 5,000, Friends of the Library?
Yes, they did
from
get
72?
5,000.
So he put on there an additional 2,500, and I was saying move that 2,500, enough of it to the Blue Star Moms so they could get their cargo van.
That's not the way I'm reading it. I'm
We
reading it that
awarded,
the
we
new-
awarded on 7/2,
Right.
$5,000 to the Friends of the Public Library
and to BEEP.
and to BEEP.
Yeah.
So 10,000 has already been allocated and voted.
It's already been allocated, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I was reading this, that it'd been reallocated, so I'm good.
No, they've
No.
already received their check.
Yep, they've
Yeah.
got a check.
I gotcha. Okay.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Me neither.
And I love the library. I served on the board, but I just,
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I really thought we should have helped the Blue Star moms the first time.
So are you looking at 6828 or 58?
Mhm.
The full amount?
Yeah.
and pull that from the Friends of the Library.
Okay.
Sorry, Brenda, don't be mad.
I think they'll still be excited. They're getting another
Yeah, I think they will be too.
$750 or something like that.
Yeah.
So how do we need a motion for this then?
So can I just want to make sure I've got the amounts here. If I'm gonna. So I have Blue Star Moms at 6858, Community Treehouse at 3,000, Dancing Spirit at 3,000, Friends of the Pine River Library at $642. Pine River shares 5,000, and then Beep at 1,500.
I think so.
Yep.
If someone would make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to disperse the funds as listed below, except for changing D.A. Blue Star Moms Memorial Day Flag Cargo Trailer to $6,858, and changing D, Friends of the Pine River Library from $2,500 to $642.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any public input? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
Trustee Katsas,
Yes.
Trustee Snooks,
Yes.
Trustee Moreland,
Yes.
and Mayor Ah.
Yes.
They really took off.
They do go for a walk.
I think so.
They went outside and the door locked behind them.
They got locked out.
They were stuck.
I don't know, we're on top.
Sorry about the phone.
That's
Um,
okay.
Katie, you were going to send me his contact information because he wanted to talk to me.
Yes, I sent you a photograph of his card. I can send that again. I can send you his,
You did?
text it to it. I
Did
can
you
just-
text it to me?
Yeah, mhm.
Okay.
I'll do that.
I didn't see that.
Okay.
I'll double check. My phone's at home. I
I'm
left it
sorry,
there.
I have not done that yet, but I will do that.
Okay. I just making sure I didn't miss it so I can contact him. Thank you. Moving on, Resolution 623, Stormwater Utility Fee.
Yeah, so the enterprise for an ordinance was adopted May of 2023 as a result of the June 2022 storm that we had. Of course, we had another fairly significant storm June of 2024. We are just about done with a master drainage plan. Of course, we reviewed those earlier in the agenda. And Town Attorney Goldman did edit the resolution, which is the final was attached to my meeting recommendations and notes. And it will gain about $65,000. And in that, I would like to make sure that all those that are eligible for utility relief are exempted for the fee until January of 2025. We give them coupons, and so they pay their bill, and they also get a coupon that they also reduces their bill. In this case, it would just be easier if we just reduced it, exempted them for now, and then in January 2025, they'll probably get a reduction, but not necessarily just completely exempted. And keep in mind, that's an annual, utility relief is an annual determination that the board makes, determining for those that are eligible for LEAP, can get 25%, in 2024, get 25% off of their utility bills. The $10 is a way to start collecting money to actually start working on, with USDA, looking for a grant reimbursement for the feasibility study, stormwater feasibility study, the master drainage. Of course, it'd have to be final. And then looking at grants and loans for further improvements to reduce the stormwater infiltration and property damage in the town of Bayfield.
Well, I'll start. According to our master drainage plan update, they did a study area of 38 ponds, which do not feature a constructed and reinforced spillway. Some ponds appear to have accumulated significant sediment, and they also have substantial vegetation growth, such as willow and cattails. And then they make a statement: nearly all stormwater ponds are privately owned and maintained either by individual property owners or by a subdivision homeowner association. So I'm not really necessarily for a fee for everybody in town when we have 38 ponds. The town-owned ponds, there's only 3 of them, and they do not contribute to a reduction in stormwater runoff for the bulk of the town. So we're asking everybody to pay for something that is privately owned, or the responsibility of a homeowners association.
As I understand it, over 50% of our stormwater infrastructure is below standard. So it isn't just for the ponds. It's going to be for culverts and et cetera and et cetera. So it's not just about the ponds. And again, the $10 fee is to initiate the ability to file for a grant to pay for this. So the ponds is just a small piece of it.
Yes,
and the HOAs can actually apply to exempt themselves out of the fee, and that entire fee will be refunded to the HOA that's certifying that they will keep their ponds up to town standards.
So, and then, yes, that is true, but
So let me add to that then. So what we're asking the HOAs is, we're essentially telling them we will take over maintenance responsibility of HOA ponds. And the reason why is because HOAs don't know how to maintain these ponds to the engineering standards that they were built to, and we're having some of them fail. And so if the town takes them over, we can make sure that they are regularly maintained, and therefore we don't have these failure events when we have these larger storms. So right now the fee would apply to HOAs, and we would take over the maintenance of their ponds. But they can opt out, and if they opt out, then everybody in that HOA would not pay the fee, but then they would have to maintain their own pond to the standards that it was built to, and we would have staff to go in and really enforce that, which we don't have the staff right now, but this fee would help pay for that. And then if they ever in the future want to opt back in because they realize this was a good deal for them, they have to make sure their pond meets our standards before we would accept it again in the future.
Right.
So really, everybody would be paying for it because we'd be handling all the ponds as well as, like what Trustee Katzo said, all the other infrastructure that's under the streets, that's undersized beyond the ponds.
Well, isn't that infrastructure already our responsibility?
It is, but we don't have a lot of funding to help pay for it, and that's why there's a lot of deferred maintenance right now. And then, like I had said earlier, we also have stormwater that's not heading to the river, that's going into ditches that we do need to fix and figure that out. And that could take some large infrastructure to have to correct that, including Dove Ranch, even Mustang Crossing and Mason Meadows. Some of that stormwater's heading away from the river, and so how do we get that back to the river? So there's more than just the current facilities. There's facilities that we're going to have to put in to accommodate our lack of stormwater facilities right now in the community.
Well, and I think Mr. Mayor knows, because he's been on the board for a long time, that stormwater has been a big issue, especially in Dove Ranch. So I would be, I mean, I live in Dove Ranch. I'd be in favor of the $10 to start so we can get the grant, because we got to get that fixed. I mean, otherwise the ditch company is going to come at us. They're already not very friendly with us. And so I would look to try and get that fixed and then move on through the other parts of town where drainage seems to be an issue.
I agree.
Well, of course you would, but downtown, all the residents downtown are contributing $10, and they're not contributing to the problem like Dove Ranch is.
Actually,
So-
they are.
Yeah.
Downtown is just as even more of a problem because stormwater was never planned into the developments that were done, you know, in the early 70s or 80s.
I should say it's not as urgent. It's not,
Oh, it's just as urgent.
It's urgent.
Yeah.
My whole
I don't
house
know.
almost got washed off the hillside in this last storm.
It's one of the, it's like a community problem.
okay.
And so
Okay.
we have to look at how to fix the community.
So if we look at that, you know, we're in favor of affordable housing. 4 or 5 years ago when I moved here, my utility bill was $88, something like that. Today it's $127. We're looking at 10% increase for water, 10 or 15 for sewer, another $10 for this, and we have an increase for garbage. Like how, right there, my bill is going up to $200 for everybody. How are we going to say we're doing affordable housing when we have these out of control? Yep, we need $15 more for this. We need $10 more for this. I understand the situation we're in, but we have to look at it the other way too of we're making living here more unaffordable for everybody, and we do have issues with water, sewer, stormwater, garbage. Hopefully they will change when we get a new contract, but we have to look at how much we're increasing everything at once.
Well, I
And
will
is
say-
there
I will say, since
some
in the
way-
6 years that I've been on the board, and even Trustee Nyberg was
Could
there
I
during
finish,
some of that
please?
time, that we also had, every time any increase was done, there was a review, and we checked all of the other areas to see what they were paying for the same services, and we have never been the highest. We've always been right there with like Ignacio and how much they pay for theirs, which is the lowest in our regions. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, that it is increasing, and unfortunately, that just is how things have been going. Everything costs more, your food bill, everything. We still have to pay for these things, and we still have to protect our citizens.
Well, and a
So
feasibility.
could I continue? I was
Sure,
interrupted and I had
sure.
a comment and
Go right ahead.
I had a statement to finish with. What I'd like to say about that is just observing, and if there's another way, like we have these known drainage problems in there, can we start to work on that without, I mean, can we start to look at what we need to do to correct these items? Is there another option besides the stormwater fee? Can we look at each individual project? Can we just go through them and say, okay, this one just in general needs this or that, to see if there's another option besides just starting out with another fee, taking it piecemeal? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Can we address too real quick, because I know you brought up affordable housing, and that is a huge concern in our community. We do have a program for utilities called LEAP, where you could qualify to get reduction in your utility bill. And then I'll say one more thing on electricity. There's a new program now that Corps is working on with the new solar farm out in Hesperus, where you have to income qualify, but you can income qualify to get a reduction in your electric bill by buying into that program in Hesperus. So there are things out there to really try and help with the affordability on those that really need that support. And the town's been participating in LEAP for, I don't know, Katie, quite a few years now.
I think it's our 4th year.
But it also gets to the point, I mean, 70% of the people right now are living off their credit card, and 50% of those or more are gonna go bankrupt. I mean, and we keep adding fees. We're not helping people.
But it doesn't change the infrastructure situation.
Well,
The feasibility
so we're gonna kick
plan-
out people that can't afford it.
No.
We are.
But somebody has to pay for it, and we all live here, so all of us have to pay for it. And when you consider that the $10 initiates the ability for the town to get a major grant to begin to take care of this, that's really what it's about. 2014 was when the stormwater drainage feasibility was done. Nothing was done for 10 years. Our infrastructure is deteriorating as climate change impacts are going up across the country. Bayfield is also included in that. And when our residents' homes get flooded because the town is not acting responsibly towards a depleted or below standard infrastructure, that's not right either. So we, in taking care of the infrastructure, we're taking care of a lot of people.
But you made a comment there. The town's not acting responsibly. So why do we gotta keep nickel and diming every person to get something that should have been updated throughout the years consistently?
Because it costs money and somebody's got to pay for it.
So we go and nickel and dime our citizens that already are having a hard time living? I don't see, like, I know it's only $10, but it's $10 here, and then it's $10 there, and then it's 15 over there.
But
You know what I mean? It just keeps taking it out of your
Right.
pocket.
I also know that we did, so what has happened in the town probably in the last 20 years is instead of having regular prices where they went up every year as cost of living went up, that didn't happen
Yep.
in this town. And so almost nearly every study that we've done since I've been on the board has proven that there was no increases through all that time frame. And unfortunately, where we're at and what we're sitting here on the board is problems with the way everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Having, the infrastructure is just deteriorating, but you have to have money to pay for it. But unfortunately, we didn't have that consecutive increase that just was cost of living instead of, like this nickel and diming, this more expensive stuff that's been happening recently. Nothing happened for years and years and years. That's why it's such a problem right now. But it's true. I mean, if your house is flooding and you're in one of those areas that has that problem, like you, $10 or more? How much would your flood insurance cost?
Well,
How much is flood insurance gonna cost for all those homeowners? It's gonna cost a lot more than $10 a month.
I get that, but it's also, to me, it's why do we have to go to the people and make them pay for why we haven't been updating our stuff?
I get it, but what else can we do? What's the other solution?
And where would that
And,
money come from?
I mean, at least on this one, what we're trying to do, which I think Nicole is great at and Katie is great at, is they're trying to minimize that cost as much as they can to the people and then getting grants. We have gotten so many grants since Nicole has started and Katie has started over any other times that we've been here. And that right there is what's really helping us. And there's a lot of grants out there, but you have to have that match, unfortunately. So if we can minimize that with a small fee, and I know it's nickel and diamond, but if we can minimize that with a small fee and be able to get that grant, what it does for our community in return is way more beneficial.
Well, to somebody who's living off their credit cards, $10 isn't nickel and dime 'em, that's a lot.
I know.
It's a whole lot.
But 25% off your bill if you apply through LEAP more than makes up for that.
So we're gonna put 70% of the people in Bayfield on LEAP?
If that's what they need to do,
Then the
it's
money,
available.
but then the money doesn't come in.
Right.
If they go on leap, they don't pay the fee.
We still get a percentage though, right, Katie?
Well, the current water, garbage, sewer, mosquito, those that are eligible for LEAP get 25% off of all the base rate.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so it's across the board.
But we don't get that 25, they just get it off. It doesn't come to us. Or does LEAP
Well,
pay us?
No, if you would like us not to have a utility relief, that's your decision every year. And you can, it's one way to provide those that are, not only do you get LEAP for the town, but you also get your utility bills paid for as well. So we try to encourage people to go to LEAP, if nothing else, to decrease their home management expenditures.
Well, I mean, I just don't, with LEAP, if you're, is it a reimbursement type thing? I mean, does somebody else, you just.
Currently, right now,
Yeah,
all-
I'm thinking like,
A
you know, they
rebate.
don't pay it, but we still
So
get the money.
if your bill is $100, just to make it easy, if your bill is $100, there's 25%, so you only pay $75. The $25 currently right now is debited basically in the garbage fund. So in other words, the garbage fund has had a lot of reserves that didn't make any sense why they had reserves when they didn't have staff, they didn't have capital, they didn't have anything else. We pay them and we pay them out. So that's where that $25 has been coming out of, is out of the garbage fund.
Okay, but
That's not
it's
gonna-
still within our budget.
It's still
not
within your
from
budget. It's not,
outside,
that's not gonna last forever, but it's a total of probably about, I think we're up to about $5,000 now over, what, 2 million that we collect in fees. It's a very small percentage.
And I'm having a hard time believing that 70% of our
It's national
public,
statistics.
of our public, I mean, Kathy can probably give us statistics on how many people don't pay their bills. And also another national standard that just came out, you can look it up in the New York Times. A report just came out about utility costs across the country. Wyoming, of all places, has the highest utility costs of an average of $1,400 a month.
Wow.
Colorado is down towards the bottom at $462. And I know my monthly bill averages $120 a month. So, I mean, we have very low utility costs in our community, very low when you look at it across the country. Look it up, it's amazing. Wyoming?
And we're not the cheapest place to live.
And we're not. And we've got very low utilities.
This is related, but I'm just curious about these drainage ponds. There's 30 of them, they're private, some of them are privately owned, the drainage ponds. What kind of control do we have of those being like dredged out? I know what ponds get like. Do we have any control over that?
So you have an enterprise, and you can go to the point where you start to cite them. But we're going to have to hire somebody to basically work on that almost full-time to site them and make sure that they're keeping up with the standards, including our town engineer, basically, you know, because we're not going to be able to hire a certified engineer to do this process to make sure they're dredging it, removing the silt and sediment and cattails, and we actually have a smart ditch east of Sunrise Estates that is failing, and then their pond is failing, and so they want to run the stormwater across the county road. So, you know, it's a endless. Your choice of fee is one choice. If this is the direction you don't want to do, either we do nothing about stormwater, and that's as long as we're doing something to get the water out of the ditches, the irrigation ditches, it's a water quality act by the EPA that requires that you do not use ditches for stormwater. So what's happening is that's just where it goes. You know, in the years ago, 50 years ago, before they had the act, they just automatically, so downtown area, it's all draining basically into irrigation ditches. And, you know, as long as we're doing something about it, but if you choose to do nothing, that's your choice.
Well, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just curious who was responsible for cleaning them out.
There's got to be another solution besides a fee. Seems like.
Brian, you gonna say something?
I'm waiting for the mayor.
You look like you want to say
Public
something.
comment.
Okay, I'll open it to public comment.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. The argument that you have of fees, no fees, up fees, down fees, I get that. But you're at this point now because over the last however many years you have deferred those fees. That's why we're in the state we're in now. So if you continue to defer the fees and get caught up again, we're not going to get there. That's why when I started attending these years ago, my big push was you've got to get the developers to pay for this up front, and you have to do it properly. And you have an engineer that is also hired by the developers. So you've got to have really good engineer oversight. We have not had that in Bayfield. But look back 20 years, all these things that are failing, who oversight that? You were on the board for years. We're now in a state where we're trying to play catch up. Well, there has to be fees involved with that. If you defer these fees now again, how does that help us? How do we ever get caught up if we keep deferring the $10 here or the development fee there? Developers have got to be held responsible. Most of my business in Durango is with developers. That's where my bread and butter comes from. That's who pays me. And I fight with them all the time about what's fair. And when the city or the county comes at them for whatever reason on the fees, thank goodness we are starting to raise those fees now. This should have been done 20 years ago on a regular basis. You haven't done that. Stop deferring these fees because we can't defer the infrastructure problems anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what's the pleasure of the board?
I say start the fee at $5 then. Start the fee at $2. If we're just starting a fee just to get started so that we can apply for grants, do we have to, I mean, I'm not saying defer, I think there's other solutions besides the fee if we keep looking at it. We look at the known drainage systems, I don't know. But if we have to do something right now immediately, I'm just saying 10% increase in water, 10%, 15% in sewer, increase in garbage, and this, can we start with $5? Can we start with $2? Just so it's not, can we start with 7% water? Can we look at it holistically, this increase? Because, just like I said, these fees are going up. My fees have gone up 50% since I moved here 5 years ago. So I'm just asking, can we look at it holistically like that and consider maybe a compromise in some way, if that's possible? Can we do $5?
So the engineer had $29 in there.
So it's already.
That's where they started.
Compromise.
Yeah. And that's just for residential. That doesn't include commercial. So commercial is going to be a completely different fee, and that's what they're helping us determine.
Okay, and then when you said 10, you said that we were doing that mostly just to get the process started of applying for grants.
Applying for grants. Now, keep in mind that your grant funders are going to look for, I'm going to call it skin in the game. So in other words, not only are you charging your citizens, but they're also going to give you funds from either tax collection or USDA types of grants and loans. And a loan you're going to need to do most of this infrastructure. And a loan is going to say, how are you going to pay it back? And if you don't have a fee that's adequate enough, there's nothing wrong with lowering it to $2 or $5, but the problem is they're going to look at it and say, you haven't even, your engineer is saying 29 and you're not even touching the surface of where you need to do to pay for it. So why should a funder take other dollars from other communities and contribute to the town of Bayfield?
Alexis, I really do understand your concern, but the truth of the matter is that everything's gone up, and if we don't get this kind of help through this grant, we're probably not going to see a grant like this for years to come.
Do we have a grant on the table?
We have, we've been working with USDA for a while. We don't fall under that eligibility requirement based on our income, so there's a lot more depraved or economically challenged communities other than Bayfield. So in the other communities I've worked in, we actually received other additional money because of the economic status. So that tells me that I realize that there's credit card debt and there's other expenditures, but we have an income that's higher than it actually gets us to other systems. So once we get USDA, then we'll get DOLA and all the other grants that come with stormwater, and you're going to look at a loan because that's the only way you're going to be able to pay for this stuff to keep it, to start working on removing the stormwater from infrastructure.
I feel like this is a bleeding wound, and a Band-Aid's not going to cut it. This is going to take some surgery and some costs and some commitment, and the town needs to make a commitment. They've put this off for too long, and to Trustee Nyberg's point, the ditch companies are getting pretty fed up. And we're being irresponsible by not redirecting the water to the river. There's a lot of other ways that things can come at us and cost us even more money than this $10 fee is going to cost us. There's built-in guarantees that we're going to get hit harder if we don't take responsible action. And if the ditch companies know that we're taking responsible action, they'll be more cooperative and helpful. But if we just continue to deny that this is our responsibility and not make the commitment, it's only going to get worse. I mean, I don't like it either, but there's just, to me, there just doesn't seem a better option.
So I guess I would also defer to the town attorney. Where's our liability in this? If we choose to do nothing, or if we choose, like,
That's a big question.
You know, I
Like,
don't know that I've been involved enough in this. Michael Goldman's been reviewing most of it, so sorry, I don't feel like qualified to talk
well,
to you about this right now.
I would feel more confident in making a decision when he's present to ask him these questions, because I feel like we need to know where we would lie in litigation, what's our responsibility. So I guess I would defer and wait until we can have some sort of clarification from the town attorney.
I'm okay with that.
Well, I feel like we've already had this discussion. We agreed on the $10 as a board previously, and now we're just trying to make a motion to put together this resolution. So I feel like these questions, these concerns should have been expressed when the feasibility study came out and was presented to the board. We've agreed to an enterprise fund. We've agreed to a $10 fee, and now it's just getting it in a resolution. So I feel like this going around and around and bringing the lawyer in is just putting off the inevitable. So again, you got to just make a hard decision.
So I don't have a problem with answering the question and, you know, that Trustee Nyberg has with, you know, Goldman. But I agree on some level that actually the resolution that's here before us today is about some people who can't really afford that $10. And I would like us to decide on that piece, and maybe we bring back and have that question on the next one to revisit the $10.
Did we agree on the $10? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the, at May 30th.
Okay.
That was, you didn't necessarily vote on it, you just
Okay,
all.
we didn't have a vote on it.
Yeah,
Right.
they just
So
shook
it
your
was-
head
We
and say,
gave
yeah,
it
let's
a
just do
thumbs up.
$10.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it was
Yeah.
suggested.
So I think we could do the resolution today and then bring it back. I mean, I don't think there's really a problem with that piece of it. Because the resolution has to do with waiving fees for some people.
So I still need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 623.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? I think we discussed it enough. Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg,
No.
Trustee Hartz,
No?
Trustee Katsas,
Yes.
Trustee Snooks,
No.
Trustee Moreland,
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin,
No.
and Mayor Ah.
No?
It was $550.
Moving on, resolution.
So could I just get some clarification? So the resolution was denied, and so we'll just have Goldman, Town Attorney Goldman, basically go through and determine your liability for not having, so you have a stormwater enterprise. And is it the fee, the enterprise, or is there a different manner that you would like to deal with that?
I think a lot of it's the fee. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is, what's it gonna cost people and are they, and who is responsible for the water? Like, if there's water going into a ditch, whose responsibility is that? Is that the town's? I mean, doesn't it make a difference on where that water's coming from? Don't landowners have their own liability on what they're doing with their stormwater to a point? The town being one of them?
So it's a civil issue between property owners. So we dealt with that in Clover 7. We had a landowner that was basically flooding out another landowner, and we went back to them and said it's a civil issue. But it's between two property owners, and that's where it has to be. They weren't happy with that response, but that's the way that attorney responded to that. As far as the other flooding and, I mean, I think maybe it'd be a good work session at some point to determine what you would like to do beyond the litigation. Litigation, you don't know necessarily what that's going to be until somebody actually takes an action against you. So, but we can certainly find out from where he's, what that would be. But you've already had, the irrigators here talking about what they had to do in the storm that we had at the end of June.
And the developer was non-compliant with what he was doing.
Actually, he was compliant. He is compliant.
On Mustang?
Yeah,
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
can answer that a little bit. So development projects are required to put in stormwater ponds to collect their stormwater and release it at the historic rate in the historic location. So for instance, Mustang Crossing used to sheet flow onto the Ludwig's property. And so when their engineers designed it, they're supposed to release it at the same place, but at historic rates. And when they're taking out pasture and putting in streets and pavement, the ponds are needed to slow that release of that water, but it's still supposed to go the same direction it always went. And so that's where there's some concerns from the Ludwigs is that they're worried about the quality of that water coming in. That quality is supposed to be addressed through the ponds process. And it's the same with Haga. We're getting complaints from Appaloosa Development, the subdivision, because the water from Haga is still going that direction. And that's because that's where it historically went. It just has to be released at its historic rates. Because again, all the water is supposed to eventually come back to the river. And so that's why it's going in those same historic patterns, because it's still supposed to flow back to the river. And so unless you have Mustang put in these big old pipes that go all the way to the river, it's going to take the historic route that it's always taken.
Right.
But it just has to be released at that historic rate. And that's what the ponds are for. They're not to detain, because that's illegal. The water's supposed to go back to the river. That's part of the Colorado Water Pact. Our water's supposed to get back to the Colorado River. So the detention ponds can't detain. They just retain and release at historic rates in the same location they've always released. So that's kind of the big picture. I think the Ludwigs, Mustang Crossing was reviewed by our town engineers. It meets our code for water quality and the release rate that it's supposed to be released at. So it's a hard one there. And I know that the ditches are not necessarily the new construction going into the ditches, because for instance, Haga, the ditch is underground. Water doesn't get into it. Clover 7, the ditch is buried. Water doesn't get into it. Mustang Crossing, it doesn't go into a ditch. So it's not the new projects going into the ditches. It's all our existing infrastructure was not built to standard going into the ditches. Now, Dove Ranch, yeah, unfortunately, that developer left and did not live up to his requirements, and we've done a lot of steps to change that, and bonding and things that were not done in the past. Since Katie and I have been here, and Jeremy, we've really tried to correct all that so new developments will not follow that same pattern that Dove Ranch went through. None of us were here when Dove Ranch was built. But, so it's not the new developments that are going into the ditches. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but that's kind of the big picture of stormwater. Except for Dove Ranch. They are going to the ditch.
So your next work sessions are going to be on the 23rd. That will be with Patrick Rondinelli. And then the 30th will be basically you're going to be Patrick Rondinelli, basically a second meeting with him, and then going through capital improvements. I did not plan on Town Attorney Goldman being here, but he can certainly be here on the 6th. And he's also probably going to reach out to other attorneys that deal with water quality as well. So, I mean, that's.
And then we would have a work session on the 6th for that?
Well, you have a meeting on the 6th.
So it would be addressed in the meeting rather than
Well,
a work
I'm
session?
guessing that just the complexity of this and what you're asking for, if you want the town to find another way to fund it, we're gonna have to figure out what that is. I'm thinking about an hour or two to do that work session. It's not gonna be a couple minutes in a meeting.
And Katie, wouldn't it be beneficial to have this enterprise fee set up before we go into our budget meeting? Or our budget planning?
Well, so we have been we've been going the speed that we had in enterprise. We've had two pretty major storms, 2022 and 2024. We heard that we wanted to deal with stormwater and some of the public. We've had the ditch companies here. We've had the homeowners that have been affected by stormwater. So we were going a direction that we thought that that's the direction you want to go. But if that's not the direction you want to go, that'll take, you're going to have to tell us. And we can research, how it'd be a compliance issue, and we have to hire somebody for compliance and stormwater. And that's another thing that may be the direction you decide to go. You're not going to deal with Dove Ranch unless you take every one of those homeowners and you basically require that they pay for that stormwater. I mean, that's another way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
To the tune of thousands of dollars. And those homeowners weren't responsible for that. The developer was, but again, the town let them walk from their obligation because they were going into foreclosure.
Yeah, we took an estimate in 2021 regarding the estimate, or 2020 regarding SMAs. I think that was our engineer at the time, and all the property owners. And so each property owner in Dove Ranch would be required for about $48,000, and the church property is close to $500,000 based on property location. So, and that's a direction that the board can decide to go.
It still doesn't fix the rest of the issues in the town.
Well,
I mean,
you can do that. You would have to do the same thing. It would have to be equal.
Yeah.
You'd have to start, if Mesa Meadows pond is breached, if Sunrise Estates, you have to start billing them, feeing. It would be a fee per stormwater. And of course, we own the one in Clover 4, I believe.
Clover 3.
Clover 3, so then you're gonna have to figure out how do we, does the town pick that up, or does the property owners in Clover 3 pick the cost
And
up?
what about downtown? All the residents
Downtown would have to be the same way.
Exactly.
Removing that stormwater.
Exactly.
And we did also apply for the feasibility process for the Dove Ranch basin based on the board's approval for us to start that process. And I just got the green light from the county to move forward with their subdivision process, but I think we will hold off until we get further direction from the board, because that's going to start costing us money to apply, as well as engineering for survey plat. And so we'll pause that until we get more direction from the board on how to proceed.
I think my concern is that it was agreed by the board to do a feasibility study. The feasibility study was done, and then we also agreed to begin with a $10 fee. And now the backing out or redirecting or the questioning or I find that troubling for the public. Like, do we not know what we're doing when we decide to do it?
Well, I would suggest that instead of back and forth, would you be available on the 29th of July to have kind of a 2-hour work session, and we'll get as much answers as we can regarding this, because we're getting in budget season. So you have a lot of long meetings coming up here, and if there's some suggestions from the board of how to pay for it or what to do, I'd love you just to email me directly so we can at least have the town attorney at least have that. And of course, I'd have to check with his schedule as well.
29th works.
I'll make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Resolution 624, nonprofit events downtown.
Yeah, so in reading, actually, you have a 2009 economic study that was done for the town. And then in 2015, you also had a downtown Colorado study done, and it was a community assessment. And in that, it just seems to be very clear that they're looking for downtown events that bring the community together. There's quite a few statements through this about the downtown area and, you know, bringing people down here. Definitely economic development, there's a little bit more. But in 2009, there was a lot of changes in Bayfield as well. I don't know if you remember 2007, 2008, there was a lot of construction, a lot of growth. And then 2008 was the housing collapse in the banks. So that's where you saw things change. But it kind of addresses that in here. But looking at, you know, economic development and bringing sales tax continues to be in both of these plans. So.
So the resolutions to, for the town staff to waive up to the first $1,000 for an event in 2024? Or to waive up to $1,000 per event?
Per event. And we have Heritage Days that will be I believe it's the 28th of September, and then the 3 block parties. And Dustin has done a really good job of saving money in those funds. And it is what this assessment was asking you to do. But anyway, it's certainly up to you.
I think these events encourage good community connection and then also bring additional funds to the town. So I don't have a problem waiving the $1,000, especially since it seems to be working, and why fix something that isn't broke?
And would this just be for the block parties, or would it be for any nonprofit, like the musical one in October and
Shoot Days, Heritage Days.
so?
Are you talking about Brie Frankenstein?
Yeah. So would other events like that also
So I don't know
qualify?
if he's planned anything. He's canceled
He
a
canceled
couple.
Brewfest this year. He did talk to me at the 4th of July. I ran into Leck, and
Wait,
he's
not
talking about bringing it back next year, the Pine River Brewfest. He did talk about renting school district property to do it on, but I was talking to him about maybe the ball field, just because liquor license-wise, there's a fence. It's easier to maintain and keep it in there. And he's going to talk to me at some point. But B. Frankenstein, for all I know, is still going, in October.
It's a little different, and I don't think we just barriers and we leave them out there.
Just barriers, yep, and the BSB staff does all of that. Yeah.
So, and the Brewfest is for which nonprofit?
It's for B. Franks.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't do
Okay.
it in 2024.
But they would qualify for that?
Well, they're
1,000
in a park. That's different. It's not
Okay.
downtown.
Just downtown events?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve Resolution 624.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Is there any public input? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Hartz?
Yes.
Trustee Katzos?
Yes.
Trustee Snooks?
Yes.
Trustee Moreland?
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin?
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
Yes. Next up is the RHA amendment to funding agreement.
Yeah, so the RHA, we had an agreement that had just a fee for 2022 and then 2023 and 2024, 2023 and 2024. And it was stagnant, so it didn't change or have an escalation in the contract. And this one, they just added the CPI, so the suggestion by RHA was to increase it by almost 30%. The CPI is typically around 3%, so that would be a lot different than, and it actually is something that we can count on versus somebody's guess of what that cost is going to be to the town. Of course, the other local governments are in the middle of their budget as well, so it's good to know what that's going to be.
Questions?
And the only thing is in my recommendation of motion, I had Mayor Pro Tem Hartz. In this case, it would be Mayor Ah.
What is the amount we're?
It's about $11,000, so it'd be about another $500. For 2025, not for this year.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Mayor Ah to execute a clean copy when available of the RHA amendment.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any public input? Roll call, please.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Hartz?
No.
Trustee Katsas?
Yes.
Trustee Snooks?
Yes.
Trustee Moreland?
Yes.
Trustee McLaurin?
Yes.
And Mayor Ah.
No. Board of Trustees report. Everything I've been to was the Planning Commission meeting last week, which was when we discussed the Chapter 10 amendments that we already did tonight. I don't have anything more to add to that. Trustee Hartz.
I attended the Alliance meeting on Tuesday. There was a presentation by the Harley-Davidson company, organization, owner, and the La Plata Childhood Program Director, talking about childcare and what a concern that is. It was a really humbling and just very humbling to see that report and what desperate condition we were in for childcare in La Plata County. So more to come on that. They had a board meeting where we talked about the update on their RUN program, which is a program that offers micro certifications to employers that belong to the Alliance. Is the Chamber a board, Alliance member? I would think they are.
Economic Development Alliance, all
Yes.
chambers are. All of the chambers are.
Okay.
Yeah. They're automatically included. They don't have to pay a fee to be in it.
I didn't see them listed as a member, so I'll check and make sure that they're including us, get the name recognition out there, but.
You'd have to have somebody from the chamber that's willing to go to the events regularly to report, and I don't know if there's anybody there. I'm not
Okay.
on the chamber as much as I was.
So they have these certifications, mini certifications for leadership for anybody participating in the Alliance, and the leadership, the certifications are for moving up that next step for middle management. I'll have more information after I meet with Rosalinda, who runs the program, and we'll bring it back for anybody that might want to share it with Bayfield employers. Because right now, we do not have any participation in any other programs as a Bayfield town.
Trustee Katsas.
I have a Region 9 meeting on the 25th, so I'll be reporting on that.
Trustee McLaurin?
Well, I've been, attended our second meeting on the agricultural zoning. I'm really excited about that myself. It's sounding really good. A lot of people are really interested in it. And I think we're still working on making definitions and things like that, but I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be a really good thing for the town to be able to support our agricultural heritage, and I think it'll be good for the people that are in agriculture right around the town here, that they'll be able to annex in, and I think it's a good thing.
Trustee Moreland?
Attended last Thursday, the RHA amendment we just authorized you to sign was part of what we discussed. Interesting enough, the town of Ignacio had to have a agreement with the RHA board you probably could explain.
They have a housing authority,
Yeah,
and the planning grant that they got now has to go to the housing authority versus the town of Ignacio.
Correct.
So that was a change, but it's kind of interesting as a town board, if they're going to be the housing authority board or select, from another set of people that are interested in the housing authority. So.
I thought that was interesting that they were doing their own little board, but they had to do it in order to be able to facilitate their affordable housing initiatives, because I know one of the ways they couldn't actually sell the land, was it? They couldn't.
So it's deed restrictions, and also they're actually going through the process of funding the construction of the homes as well. So that takes they have to have a housing authority for Tabor and some other legal requirements,
Which is
versus just the town board.
Which is not how we're doing it.
No, we're not doing it
at all.
that way.
We don't want to have our hands in that pot like that. But thought it was interesting they had to do their own regional housing authorities in order to do it.
Trustee Nyberg?
I have two things. My next Southwest TPR meeting is August 8th. And then just to let Mr. Mayor know that I will not be attending the July 23rd meeting due to conflict with work. But I'll be here on the 30th.
And Trustee Snooks?
Nothing. I've been meaning to ask this. You haven't sent any more emails about the Bayfield Middle?
No.
Okay.
We're waiting. They're surveying out there. They've
Okay.
been there all last week, so we're waiting for something to actually have a discussion about.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I don't have a meeting anytime in the future right now with the date, so.
So the upcoming dates are at the bottom of your agenda, and I'd like to close this meeting for July 16th at 8:46.